Welcome to this panel. We've got a great lineup of people here. They're going to give a little presentation on the areas they're working on, and then we'll have a panel discussion after. And I'd appreciate if you did have some questions, we can hold that right to the very end, and we can go through that. But certainly in this environment of streaming, I think it's sort of interesting that people are streaming very niche content from anywhere from tens of thousands to millions. And we've really progressed as an industry in this area. And there's no question that is the future. Will it take over broadcast? Well, that's always another question. I don't think it's a matter of taking over. I think they do work together, and they each have their own family. But with that, what I do want to do is I want to introduce Ryan here. You get to call yourself an evangelist, but he spends a lot of time teaching people all about streaming and what it's all about. So would you like to come up and present? Thank you.
Thank you, Stan. Hello, everyone. Wowza Media Systems, we're a media server company making media server technology and also cloud-based solutions to solve broadcast streaming over the internet, over IP. So, a lot of people don't know with Wowza, we power about 40% of the world's CDNs and service providers that actually do streaming content. We also are very big in enterprise and government, sports, education, and a range of different use cases. We have 20,000 customers in over 170 countries. So specific to broadcasts, all these names that you see here, a lot of them based here in Europe and around the globe, Wowza is really involved in building a lot of these OTT platforms, or I should say, OTT platforms are built on top of Wowza technology. So all the names you see up here have used Wowza as an origin server, as an edge server, as a way to actually deliver OTT content to end users. This is kind of a snapshot of the workflow for a typical IPTV, OTT, TV everywhere type deployment, where you're capturing content on the left, whether it be through a camera and an encoder, through a mobile app, through citizen journalism and a lot of the mobile streaming type, Periscope type use cases. And then pulling it into Wowza or a media server, whether it be cloud-based or in your own data center. And then what we're going to be talking about today is how to distribute and deliver that. How can you really achieve scale at a very economic level that rivals conventional satellite and cable delivery for broadcast use cases? So traditionally with Wowza, you can push us we can accept content as an origin server, process that, package that, transcode that, and then actually deliver it to different distribution platforms, whether it be multiple CDNs like Akamai, Level 3, Limelight, our own Wowza CDN, or even your own built CDN on Wowza Edge servers. Really what's happened is with the proliferation of HTTP streaming protocols, it's become very economical to create these stateless files that you can scale with HTTP caching networks around the world. What happens though is that there is a latency that's built into these HTTP streaming protocols. With HLS, it's common to have 10-second chunks. You have to download 3 chunks on a client device. It creates 30 seconds just by default. And then you add a CDN, you add propagation layers that can really add a lot of latency. So that's created a lot of problems in these use cases. There are technologies. Pierre-Louis from Streamroot is going to be presenting after me. And Streamroot is a great peer-to-peer sharing network that allows you to actually grab HTTP content from other peers that are close to you, that can improve startup time, it can improve quality of service, quality of experience. But the reality is to actually distribute your content at a broadcast scale across the globe, you need a lot of other things today in this day and age to really get to all these different platforms. So what's become very popular is people are leveraging social media platforms. You see Facebook Live is investing a lot in broadcast. They're wanting to actually go beyond just amateur content and really do professionally original content. This is a great way for broadcasters to reach millennials. It's free. It's a way to actually distribute your content out there and leverage those platforms. And the same is true of YouTube Live and of course Periscope and many other niche OVPs or online video platforms or other platforms that a lot of which are built on Wowza can distribute your content to all these different providers, all these different end users. So one of the things that we've done here at Wowza, we're launching this at IBC, is the Wowza Clearcaster. And we've been working very closely with the Facebook Live team. We were one of the first to actually integrate the Facebook Live API into our software and into our cloud-based service. But we've taken it a step further and built a dedicated device for people to publish broadcast quality content to Facebook Live. So this is a huge step forward. It's helped us to work with the Facebook Live team to really create an API integration that's really unrivaled in the industry. And this allows broadcasters, people like BBC News, Sky TV, Vivendi, all these large broadcast providers to really reach millennial social media platforms in a broadcast quality workflow. And this is kind of the integration we've done with them. Wowza Clearcaster can be mounted. You can pull in an SDI feed, use the Facebook Live API, and be able to stream out to those platforms. Talking about latency, this is kind of the typical latency that you see nowadays with the HTTP streaming protocols. You see there's encoding latency, protocol chunk sizing latency, CDN propagation, the player buffer that happens there. This can insert 60 seconds of latency in that whole workflow. So one of the things we're trying to achieve at Wowza is how can we rival broadcast cable satellite delivery in an affordable way with an IP workflow. So with that, we've actually come out with an ultra-low latency service as part of our Wowza Streaming Cloud that really tries to achieve the sub 2-second latency that will even beat a lot of broadcast and or satellite and cable delivery. So this is really the first time a lot of people are exploring technologies that can even beat conventional satellite and IP delivery. A lot of us are tired of watching a Champions League game or the Olympics or something that's going on, and you're watching it at a bar that has satellite, and then the guys down the street are celebrating a goal before yours, right? And I think that workflow can now be solved with IP, and a lot of people are working on those technologies. But the idea is that the ultra-low latency with our platform allows you to do that. But there are other ways to do that with conventional HLS protocols, and a lot of people are actually exploring those use cases as well. And I think that's a great segue into StreamRoute. So Pierre-Louis, they've designed a peer-to-peer network called StreamRoute DNA that really allows you to accelerate your CDN and distribute content at a global scale. So I'll pass it on to you.
Hi everyone. Thank you very much for hosting me here. I'm Pierre-Louis. I'm the CEO and one of the founders at StreamRoute, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we see large-scale delivery in this industry to really compete and have a broadcast-enabled streaming at the large scale. So, a little bit about why we exist and what drives us at StreamRoute is we really want to enable high-quality streaming with a more robust and scalable delivery. And while doing that, we want to do it with a better economics around the industry and make it really like a broadcast use case over the internet. The problems that some of the broadcasters are facing, especially in the large-scale events, is a bit of three things. One is around the quality, especially during traffic spikes. You have hundreds of thousands or millions of people that just arrive to watch a game, and it's pretty tough to deliver it. It's even more complicated when you have audience all across the globe. You want to deliver content in Latin America, Eastern Europe, Asia, and the network is just not built for that scale over the internet, unfortunately. And the third thing is that there's a big demand for highest and highest quality. Broadcast needs to be at least as good as OTT need to be as good as IPTV or satellite, and even better because we want to be top of the age and have the best. So 4K, VR, all these things is really driving the delivery and the size of the network up. So how do we try to solve this challenge? We basically built what we call StreamRoute DNA for distributed network architecture. Basically it's a distributed approach of the over-the-top delivery. So how do we do that? We actually connect all the users that want to watch the content for live or on-demand use case. So they can create connection directly to one another, and not only download the content from the CDN, but can download it directly from another user. So if you have a soccer game in Europe, you have like hundreds of thousands of people in a minute joining the stream, we will dramatically help in the network and the CDN to scale. Because you will find your neighbor or someone in the same neighborhood that is watching the same content, and you can create a very fast and low latency connection with them. So basically we do that to solve the three problems I mentioned just before: scale of the network, reach global reach of the delivery, and enable high-quality streaming at an affordable cost. The network that we're building is really massive. Any single user around the globe can become part of this big network. So today, we powering around 500 million video sessions per month. So this is one of the largest peer-to-peer network out there. And as customers using our technology, the better this network is becoming because it gets bigger. And one of the really cool things about distributed approach is that it's getting better when you have more users, which is exactly the contrary of a centralized approach when you have only a CDN. So we really see us as a complementary technology that's adding a huge capacity to the existing network, can be the ISP network or the CDN network. We're adding another layer, an extra capacity with all the devices that are out there. This is some of the users that using our technology. There's a few sweet spots where our technology is actually a great fit. One is live linear TV, especially efficient when you have events, sports events, political events. Everybody talking about the World Cup, the Champions League, the Olympics, of course. Also works great for VOD content, especially when you have the latest episode of the popular TV show that's going out there. Everybody want to watch it. And there's a huge concentration of the traffic in those contents, and peer-to-peer makes a lot of sense in this use case. Same thing for catch-up TV. Everything that happened yesterday on TV, usually people want to watch it for a few days, and then it's really like long-tail content. So in that event, we can help build a more reliable and affordable technology. So you have here like a few of our customers, and these guys are in one of these 4 categories that I just mentioned. So from events, live linear, catch-up, and VOD, classic, typical VOD. So this is an example of what we are able to achieve. So I just took this morning one screenshot of one of our customers, and to show you a little bit the scale. So this is like 500,000 users watching content on a VOD platform on a daily basis. And what you see is that we're basically able to manage 60 to 70% of the traffic. So 60 to 70% of the traffic is managed by the peer-to-peer network. And why? Because the tool that we built is really focused not only on offloading as much as possible, but get the segment of the video from the best source available. So on the real time, we check segment by segment if it makes sense to get it from the peer-to-peer network or if it makes sense to get it from the CDN. So really by switching dynamically from the different sources, we can get 60%, more than 60% of the time, basically, it's better to get the segment of the video from the peer mesh network and distributed network that we built for our customer. So now let's talk about a little bit about the economics. One of the big constraints in this industry is how to scale the platform economically. And we're seeing that you need to have a mixed approach to get the good results to do that. The big problem here is that the more users you have, the more usually you have to pay on the traditional model. The higher the quality, the more you have to pay. If you push 4K, that's going to dramatically increase your cost and have a big impact on your business. We think that you need to have a mix of multiple technologies, CDN, of course, peer-to-peer, perhaps you're part of your own CDN, perhaps some multicast in some use case. You really need to have a mix to get a good quality and get a good economics. So the cost per viewer for us is really, I mean, for other broadcasters, is really important. So that's why we really try to change the model of this industry and providing infrastructure as a service. So providing a model which is not based on the volume, basically, but more based on the capacity and the users that you need for the peer-to-peer network. So it's really like a different approach from the per gigabyte, moving out of the per gigabyte basically pricing to a more like user-based approach. So I'm sure we'll have the opportunity to talk a little bit more about it during the panel. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you, Pierre-Louis. So I have Raj Neil coming up, and he's going to give a great presentation on what he's really doing in India. I mean, he's got a huge crowd there. He's got a a real infrastructure mess to deal with, but you're quite successful. Come on up.
Thank you, Stan. When I saw this topic, I really tried to understand what we would speak about, and what I've tried to do here is really break it up into two parts. Now, if you look at the topic itself closely, it talks about the first part, which is about broadcast scale OTT audiences. How do you build audiences? Is it just about spending a lot of marketing dollars to get app installs and keep attracting more and more people, but all of us are aware there's a leaky bucket? And I would like to share some use cases of what we're doing to build audiences. And if you look at the second part, which is about broadcast economics, confounded with that problem, I think the most traditional approach to solve that is to try and get your prices down. Can you get the price of how you deliver down? Can you get other ways to deliver, in the same infrastructure that you have? And what we have tried to do back in India is to address the problem slightly differently. Why should we be looking at the same channels to deliver to achieve scale and economics, while you could be having a look at so many other things that are there? Woot comes from Viacom 18, home to more than 30 channels, broadcast channels in India. And we launched last year, in May last year to be precise. We launched with about 40,000 hours of content on the platform. And from then we have scaled up to about 25 million monthly active users as we speak right now. We stream over 5 billion minutes of content every month. 4 billion plus, closer to 5 billion is what we do every month. We deliver about a little more than 6 million streams every day. So that's really the scale of audiences that we have built already. And I would not be surprised if in 2 quarters out we're looking at double these numbers, especially with some very significant programming coming on board. This is a completely VOD platform right now. We don't have linear TV yet. Linear TV at some point will come in. This is an India-focused service. It will go international next year at some point. And I think one of the things that I would like to highlight here is that once we started building the product, we were very clear that we were not chasing these mythical numbers of 100 million downloads and so many people that have access to us. We focused on only one number, which is what is the average watch time per user every day. And that's the metric that we are extremely proud of. And 45 to 50 minutes on a mobile platform is a fairly significant number to have. If you look at our television products, we do more than 70 minutes per day per user. So that's the number that we really chase in everything that we do. When you look at building economics, I think one of the things that we tend to overlook is that there is a large amount of content being created. As I was referring to in the last slide, we uploaded about 40,000 hours of content when we started. We put in 40 fresh hours of content every day. So that's the scale of what is being put onto the platform. But a lot of this is not something which is available on television. Let's take an example of a very popular show like Big Brother. You have about 80 odd cameras and you shoot for 24 hours a day, and what you end up with every day is 1 hour of content. What we have tried to focus on extensively is to see all the footage which is being created. How can you create meaningful stories for the audiences in that with the content already there? That's where we work on something called content around content. And to give you an example about last year what we did, when we bought Big Brother, or as we call it, Big Boss 10, season 10 in India, we put out about 3,700 odd videos of content around content, which is about 230 hours of content. And the beauty of this was that when audiences came and they started consuming content, 58% of it was all of non-broadcast content which they were seeing. Now we are pushing this even further this year and saying, can we create exclusive content only for the digital platform, which will form a part of this? Therefore, when you get the users, can you increase his engagement by showing him more content? And therefore, being an ad-based platform, you end up getting revenues. Some of the other experiences that we've tried to work on are things that can't be done on television. Therefore, you try to sidestep the broadcast game by doing things which can only be done on the digital platform. This is an example of what we did with Fear Factor India. Fear Factor India was shot in Spain this year, and we created and Fear Factor, for people who are not familiar about it, it's a set of people who are celebrities who are given these tasks of scorpions and driving crazy cars and jumping off places and stuff like that. I think one of the places where 360 content has struggled is how do you tell meaningful stories which are short enough but still lend itself to, into what it is. A rock concert is a great example, but can there be other stories which are meaningful in a minute to 2 minute time? And this lend itself beautifully because we shot a lot of the things that were done for the show in 360-degree. We used web VR and we worked very closely with Google to be able to enable across our progressive web apps as well as apps, so people could actually go and even without having a headgear, just see exactly where the people were and how the stunt was happening. That has always been one of the biggest questions people ask is, was this really done by the celebrity and was it done in one shot or was it broken up and stuff like that? Was it stitched together? So this really gave you at one shot a 2-minute story about how each of the events went. While doing all of this, I think to achieve economies of scale, what we do is let's focus on reducing. What are the things that you can reduce? And we have focused extensively on image compression. If you look at one single source of image and you look at all the devices it has to go across, why should the source of the image be one size and then get modified into various places? So today, using some technologies that we work with, we're trying to see how can you deliver exactly the right image for every little piece of content that is displayed either in an app on a web. Therefore, you bring efficiency. How can you compress it to a level where you are on the naked eye you can't make out a difference, but at the back end we bring about 56% of compression. That's about images, which forms a major part of any OTT service, because when a user launches a product, all he sees are thumbnails that he needs to interact with. Then we are also working on video compression on HEVC and technologies such as HEVC and VP9 to bring in efficiency of up to 50%. And with the new standards coming in, we are hoping that this further goes down. And then the right bit rates. So, being a large country and a large audience, you need to find exact bit rates you're serving to each of the devices. So while we have done our level 1 of trying to create a set of 15 bit rates and then figure out which is the one which needs to be delivered, we are working on a machine learning layer where we'll be using heuristics to be able to actually probably measure how far are you from each of the modems, what is the signal strength to your device, what is your device, and then put in the bit rate which is exactly good for you. Now, I would like to speak about a progressive web app, and probably one of the world's first OTT products that are on a progressive web app. If you think about the entire ecosystem, the entire content consumption ecosystem, it has always been pushing you to go and do something before you can see content. Well, all that the audience really cares about is to search what he or she wants to see and be able to see it right then and there. This is where the progressive web app came in beautifully. We started working on this project with Google, and what we wanted to solve the problem of was that there are 450 million internet-connected devices in India. 60% of them are only on 4G and 3G, and 40% are still on narrowband. So you're talking about really 1G and 2G, which you can't have a meaningful stream to going at all, right? And then you look at the device fragmentation. When we launched in May last year, we had 7,000 Android devices to serve. Today, we serve 11,000 Android devices. And most of these devices are sub $100. So that means they have literally about 4 GB of space. And you're going to be fighting with all the apps out there to hold space for a product, which even with our best estimate, they are consuming only 50 minutes of a day. So it's not something which is necessity for them to keep on their app. How do you solve this entire problem? And that is where the progressive web app came in, where we really went in for, it was a redesign, a first of its kind, where we did not design for the app first and then brought it to the web. We designed it for the mobile web, and then we worked with the Google team to do a lot of technological changes to be able to render this extremely efficiently. And I think the numbers now speak for themselves. And to make it easy to understand, I've broken it up into two parts: the tech improvements which were done and what has the business impact been. On the tech improvement, if you see, we are loading the pages 80% faster now. The bounce rates, people who come in and then don't do anything and leave, that has gone down by 19%, so that's always good. The data saving that we are able to achieve because of the way all the pages have been constructed and what we do to deliver them is about 70%, so that's a huge win for us as well as the consumer. And the session time, the amount of time a person stays on after he comes in has gone up by 39%. On the business impact, building in from there, the visitor to video views have gone up by 77%. So this is a visitor who came in and consumed content. That has gone up by 77%. And because we're an AWOD platform, we would only monetize if the viewer actually watched the video. So that's a good metric. And on the browser by itself, if you look at the web browser and the mobile browser, 20% of all traffic was coming onto the mobile browser. So obviously something was broken. It was not a good experience. Today, as we speak, 50% of the daily users are coming on the mobile browser. So they are having a great experience. And the good news is they're watching the same number of videos as they would on the application, on the app, of any of the native apps. 2.2x increase in daily average views, and the cost of marketing has gone down by 80% for these platforms because you're comparing app install versus promoting on the web and getting traffic in. Now, when I spoke about how do you not use the same pipe to deliver, there's a very interesting project that we are working on. This is called Woot Go. India is a large country. We have about 1.3 billion people, and we have started with one of the most populous states, which is called Maharashtra, home to Mumbai or Bombay as people know it, and that has about 35,000 state transport buses. So what we have done is that we have worked with another technology partner and created like an intranet within the buses themselves. What we have right now is there are 7,000 buses which are live. So if I could just visualize it for you, a person gets on the bus. When he sits down, there is messaging there which tells him go to wootgo.com or woot.com. A browser opens up. If you see here, it is multilingual because that's the large audience you will get. It is broken up into the languages, which is Hindi, Marathi, etc., which you can go and consume. And there's a lot of content that the person can just consume, for free. We are hoping to seed this entire ecosystem and scale it up to 35,000 buses. So you're talking about millions and millions of users who will be using this network. And if you look at the other side, this is exactly the space where digital penetration of marketing has not reached. These are the people who form in that 40% of the narrow band, and this seems like a great way to be able to get there. And the early numbers show that each of the users who use the buses are using 40 plus minutes of content, so that's good. And a couple of other just pointers that we are working on. We heard about peer-to-peer as far as CDN is concerned and streaming. What we are also working on is that if I download a content on my platform, how on my app, can I share with somebody offline as opposed to again using streaming? How do you increase consumption by making sure that people don't leave, which is about preventing churn, and use a lot of analytics to be able to do that. And as far as India is concerned, it's a multilingual country. Only a small fragment of people speak English. English being the primary driver for all digital ecosystem just intuitively seems wrong. We have about 9 major languages, so we are on a huge project to be able to go from just English into 9 different languages over next year. I think that's for me. Thank you.
Let's go. That's great. Thank you very much, Razjil. So we'll get the panel going up here. If you can sit under your names, I would appreciate that. And sitting over here is also, I'll introduce John. John's a long-time guy in the broadcast business here that's moved over to Google, a year ago? Couple of years ago. All right. Seems like yesterday. Anyway, so he'll join us here, and we'll get on with a few questions here. So first of all, the first question I wanted to dig out there and going through the presentations. One of the things that came up is, more people using or more viewers actually improved performance. So who wants to pick up on that? What happens with the niche people that are just trying to do maybe 100,000 as opposed to millions?
Well, I think one of the democratizing things of what the business we're in right now is IP. IP allows you to democratize content regardless of how large you are, right? It's like you don't need to be someone who can negotiate a satellite contract to actually get your content out there. With IP, it really allows any of us to create an OTT platform of our own, starting with opening up our browser, using WebRTC, and then connecting and streaming out to the world, going into a YouTube Live platform, going into Facebook Live. You don't necessarily need to be a very, very large provider to actually create your original content, which has been very popular with social media platforms. And I think from that perspective, that's quite one of the things that we love about IP, that internet in general just democratizes the way we distribute content and media.
Mm-hmm. Let's just talk about latency. That was obviously the big issue here. So I'll jump on you. You work a lot on the Google side, and where's latency come into? Is it because people want to beat satellite? I mean, one of the things that comes up is they're always annoyed. They're talking to their wife on the phone, and they've heard the sports goal before someone else, or their friends or whatever. But ultimately, does that really matter? Is that really worth fighting over? So, what's your opinion on that?
Well, and I think one of the other presentations captured it really well. There are different use cases. Communications is a different use case than watching a video or watching a live event, and the latency requirements really matter. In those cases, to some degree, things like very intelligent edge caching matters. Peer-to-peer, obviously, as mentioned before. And then when you get to protocols like WebRTC, which is really built for real-time communications, but there are other applications where it can do video delivery as well. So you compound that then with video compression and the fact that bit rates are continuing to get lower and lower. And so we see latency becoming a problem that in the OTT space is becoming more and more achievable, low latency becoming more and more achievable as things move on.
You see, you've hit the nail on the head there, though, as we've gone to higher bit rates and higher resolutions, obviously compression gets slower and slower. It takes a longer time to do it well because we want to get down to lower bit rates. But sometimes your satellite delivery is actually slower than the internet. So it's sort of interesting. Now, on your side, I think what you're doing on the buses is really cool. But what about reformatting the clips? Can you do long form?
Sure. So, yes, we do long form. It is something which is, so I didn't know if you want to speak specifically about the bus or...
either way, but the bus was obviously, the initial thing where people were commuting.
Right.
We're basically looking at, 2-minute soap operas.
Sure.
But ultimately bus journeys are maybe a little longer, but...
Right, sure.
So I think things have progressed a lot differently.
Perfect, absolutely. And so the buses here that we're talking about actually go intercity. So going from a city to another, the shortest journey would be about 45 minutes, going up to 6 hours. And that is why we do a daily refresh of about 20 hours of content, which then when the buses at night, necessarily all the buses go back to the bus depots at night. And that problem we have solved about how do you get fresh content in. And that is where fresh content comes in. Early days, but we have put in both long series as well as movies, and we see that there definitely is a good tendency to see movies, and there is consumption happening of both the grown-up movies as well as kids movies. Parents trying to keep their kids busy on the bus. So so long form I think coexists onto this. I think the commute itself gets defined by where you're commuting to, and so. That's really what we have done, experimented with both types of content.
Right.
And I think the key thing there is that that's a platform that lets you reach a lot of viewers who have no connectivity at all.
Right.
And so, and it's all web and IP based, so you can do short form, you can do long form, you can do personalization on the fly, but it doesn't necessarily require an actual internet connection to pull it off. So.
Yeah. Ultimately, getting live is going to be a while, as far as that goes.
It's a different problem.
That's another problem. Anyway,
partners actually on the live workflow. So on the live workflow, we've been working on with train vendors, bus vendors, cruise ship vendors. In fact, our partners over here, Thetis 21, they actually been working on a train deployment in Spain, where they actually are capturing live satellite signals, encoding to IP on the train, and actually delivering that content through a local streaming server. So it's like the idea of having VOD content, but then also taking that a step further with live. But a lot of that comes down to economics. On a train, you do have a certain fixed amount, or on a bus, you have a certain fixed amount. And the idea of deploying a live to VOD or even a VOD workflow inside of that local environment, maybe it doesn't work out from an economics perspective. I think when you look at it from a macro perspective over the public internet, you can get your content to the entire world over your OTT platform. And especially if you're creating original content and you're not restricted by paying DRM, paying for the content rights, you literally have a power to push your content. India, I live in Spain, and in India there's a huge population of Indians there. You can create original content and get to that geography, which would have been very difficult with a traditional, exactly.
Sure. So, just into that point, I think what we have been trying to do is to break away from the thought that all content delivery is just internet, and look at so I already have the content, I already have audiences who want to consume that content. If we only always continue chasing down, smartphones and devices the traditional internet can get to, we will not solve a large part of the India problem. And not only India, I think globally also, when you travel, there are places where you just don't have, United States is a large country. You don't have the best connectivity ever. Would you do a similar bus exercise there? I don't know. I'm not the right person to comment on that. But for India, I think, if only 300 million people have 4G right now out of a population of 1.3 billion, that means at least 700 million more people have, could consume that content. So how do you not wait for them to become all internet connected? How do you create opportunities for them to be able to consume content as we speak? That's really what we have tried to do, of complementing internet with alternate forms of distribution.
Yeah, no, I think that's cool how you're doing that. I do want to ask Pierre a question here just about live versus on demand and how that changes what you do.
I mean, I think you need to find the right technology for what you're doing. This live really different if you're doing a sports event when you want to have like a very low latency. You want to make sure that you have the high quality and low latency, or if it's like a more traditional broadcast, or if it's an event where low latency is not necessarily important, then you actually don't care to have like 30 seconds or 1 minute. So same thing for on demand. Our technology doesn't make any sense for use case where you have like a very long tail content, one person watching one video. You need to find another way than peer-to-peer to deliver it. But in some use case, you see actually a high concentration on the most popular content. Like you mentioned, like TV shows. People want to know what happened yesterday on this show, and you're going to have like a huge concentration. And in that case, it doesn't make any sense to have millions of people downloading one time each the content to their phone or to their computer. So distributed architecture makes a lot of sense. And I think it was really interesting what you've been doing about like offline download, pre-caching. I think you really need to have a mix of technologies depending on your use case. And that's how we see the industry moving forward. You need to have good CDN in some use case. You need to do pre-caching, peer-to-peer delivery when it makes sense, low latency by using like WebRTC or other technology when you really need to do it. But you don't have to do low latency to do just for low latency. Some use case doesn't make any sense. You don't have to pay more to pay a premium to do low latency when it doesn't make sense. So I really need that. You need to know, okay, what's going to be the use case, and then look at the technology that's going to fit the use case. That's really the way I think people are thinking now in the industry.
So let's change the topic over to user stats. That's one of the big advantage broadcasters don't have, is they don't really know who watches. People take ratings or anything, but where does that come in? Do your people collect stats from you? Is that a main part of their business? How do you use that?
Okay, I thought that would be addressed to me. So yes, I think, if you look at the entire measurement system around which the broadcast industry has been built, and more specifically in India where we don't have digital measurement yet, even internationally it's in nascent stages, and and digital is sold separately as opposed to being sold together. One of the greatest things that we have got now is access to real-time information about what content people are consuming, how are they consuming it, at one level. So you have user data about the consumption patterns. You know much more than just so when you get your rating, you just know it's rural versus urban, it's this versus that. Here we have actually, if you look at our numbers, 25 million per month, you have actual users consuming content across the country. You know exactly what content they're consuming. So this becomes very invaluable at one level for just the basic marketing and distribution. At the second level, it actually starts to give back the real-time feedback into the content creation by itself. Another very interesting on the content creation I will come to is that one of the things we looked at is that if there is an episode which is say 22 minutes long, people come in, they are drawn to it, they come in every day, but they only watch 9 minutes.
And why is that?
Exactly. So that's a great question, and I would never have been able to solve it if I didn't have enough analytics going in. So because they're watching it on devices and it's a 22-minute show, they don't want to watch the whole thing. Imagine it's an Indian movie and you have a song and dance sequence in between. You necessarily don't see that. So we see that the users are actually seeking to forward into stories that they want to see and how.
Well, that was actually my next question. That is one of the big issues that you deal with streaming, is people are used to the PVR at home that they can instantly move. You can't do that when you're streaming.
I don't know. I think maybe you can do
Or
it
do
much
they just
better.
or do they just tolerate it?
No, I mean, at Wowza, we have a DVR or PVR, however you want to call it, technology that allows you to cache the content and make that cache available to a player on different devices, and you just need a player
Okay.
that enables that. So yeah, you can completely do a live, DVR workflow. I think the part that's engaging is you asked about statistics, and statistics are great and all, but it's engagement. Engagement can be very hard to measure. I think IP, and when you're developing an OTT platform like Viacom's platform, is the second screen experience, which I think you did a great job of capturing that. We support VR and 360 with our technology. I know StreamRoot does with their content and their resolution or their platform. And I think with the VR 360 piece is that content, there's not a lot of engaging content out there, but when you can create a second screen experience that actually allows you to watch a live Champions League match and then see a 360 behind the goal in real time, see it inside of the halftime locker room, this really creates an engagement level that you haven't been able to get with traditional broadcast workflows. And I think that's exciting,
Well, and to take it one step further, there are ways that you can then share those highlights through social media to all of your friends, and then because of the way that the APIs are lined up now, it's one tap or one click, and then they can look at the highlight or even the live stream. It just pops open the browser, and they're right in it. So from a social engagement perspective, I suppose when I was a kid, I'd call up my friends and say, hey, change to this channel, but take that and now multiply it to the entire world, and that's really where web video is now today.
Yeah, and the big problem with creating that engagement or the second screen experience is matching up. A lot of people do watch it over a satellite connection, but watch second screen over an IP connection. Synchronizing that content when it comes to things like voting, for like a game show, or that's something that people have been frustrated with IP. I'm seeing a lot of movement into the industry of synchronizing that across different distribution platforms.
Well, that fits in your bailiwick there.
Yeah.
And I think that's exciting,
He's the timing guy. What about resolution? You were showing some charts on resolution there, and how you can, the cost could be irrelevant depending on the resolution.
Yeah, I mean, everybody want to push the resolution higher and higher.
Well, I do question that on another note anyway. You're on a little phone. Why do you need that resolution? But that's another story.
I mean,
it's all
again,
marketing, so it doesn't really matter.
Yes, you don't need 4K on a screen like that, definitely. I mean, most of the case, I mean, what we see today is that broadcasters wanna have the best user experience, and you need to have the right technology to do it too. And that's coming back to my point, is that there's a lot of use case where you having 4K or having VR streaming really makes a lot of sense and going to bring more people to your platform if you're doing it. But then is how to do it at scale, especially in some countries like India. I bet do 4K on a 3G remote region, that's not possible. So find a way around compression, caching, adaptive bit rate, and that's really the way to do it. It's still hard, and it's still going to be hard. And I think it really makes a big differentiation if you have like cool content on really high resolution, and that you can play and it's starting that.
Right. So does
the
the technology change depending whether or not you're doing short form or long form content, with regards to caching, for instance?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the content, it's for like 5 minutes video clip, it's pretty easy to keep it, for example, on your phone before you're gonna watch it, because you have enough memory there to put like a 3 minutes long clip that you will be able to share.
So when you start watching
also.
it, just dump it all down.
And then it's dumped. If it's a movie long content, it's going to be hard to keep it on your phone and then share it with the other. So that's the kind of thing that we see, the kind of different use case that we see, where the performance for both traditional caching and peer-to-peer caching can work great or not, depending on this use case.
Go ahead, John.
That's a good point. The client-side pre-caching can, even for long form, can work for the first minute, for example. And it has to work in cases where the entire thing is going to go offline. Another area where things like video compression really do come into play. I did want to add one thing, though, to the question about 4K, because it's not just 4K, it's HDR and high frame rate material. Yeah. And then as we start looking at 360 video, that is by definition a much higher resolution than normal. So the boundaries are continuing to be pushed in terms of the number of pixels and the bit depth of the pixels and the quantity of them that are being sent to devices.
Right. One last question here before we turn it off is, what about building audience? How do you do that? It's cool that we can do all this delivery over the internet, but we got to have an audience. So who wants to kick in there?
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think Viacom's the best. He's the one who has to build audiences. We just have to support them.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, so I think, again, going back to what I've been speaking about, I think building audiences, there are two, the most obvious ways. One, you spend money and you tell the people that this is a product which is right here. And whether you do it on the traditional marketing, which is on television and all of that, or you digital, that's one part. But the second, I think, which is more important, sorry, is to work off the natural audiences which come and be able to expand that audience into their bases. So again, talking about what we're trying to do with the progressive web app, make it easy for them to find the content. Once they find it, make it easy again for them to consume it, and after that, take it a step further by them making it easier for them to share it. And just like we were speaking about the 360-degree content, it is going to be cool for a while. I don't think we are tired yet of seeing 360-degree content. You can see roller coasters and you can see celebrities do some ridiculous stunts. I think it's extremely shareable, and creating this audience, which again comes back into organic traffic and stays on the platform, is extremely critical for us. And that's at least what we are focused on doing.
Follow the fads.
The only part I would add is a lot of our large broadcast customers have had a hard time reaching millennials, and going through social media. These guys are the guys in the 18 to 35 demographic who spend money, right? And people want to be able to engage that. So it's changed the way that you create content, and leveraging social media, creating your own short form social media platforms and distributing your content both for live and video demand, I think is a big trend that you're going to see more and more grow with broadcasters.
Great. Well, with that, we need to wrap it up, and thank you very much, panel.